Hi, my name is Phoebe Budell, and today I will be talking about the Irish Revolt. Let's start with some background information. Ireland was ruled by England during that time. Each of the leaders in Ireland were chosen and appointed by the British government. Ireland was considered a country, but not an independent one. Great Britain controlled the main industry of Ireland, which was trading natural resources. Ireland did have rulers and a parliament chosen by Ireland, but they were under the watchful eyes of the British Lord Lieutenant. The Irish Revolt is a lot like the American Revolution in the sense that they wanted to free themselves from Great Britain and wanted to be an independent nation. Ireland was mainly under Protestant rule, which created a lot of tension in the country. There were a lot of laws made in order to restrict the number of rights the Catholics had, such as Protestants being the only ones allowed to vote in elections. There were a slew of causes that built up over the years. One major factor was the issue of religion. Ever since the Jacobite Rebellion, Catholics were not being treated the same as Protestants. This also created a Catholic disconnect due to them not being represented in Parliament, which was Anglican only. Another factor was that Ireland was under the British rule and wanted to break off in order to be self-governing. The Society of the United Irishmen was a huge part of the Irish Revolution. This was a society that was led on by Theobald Wolfe Tone, which we will discuss later. The moment they acted up, Parliament tried to suppress them. So they were forced underground, where their ideas radicalized and their anger festered. Not only were they angry with the British government, but also the Protestant Irish government. In 1796, France sent troops to support the Irish, but the weather caused their ships to go awry, and the Irish government found out about it. The Protestant Irish government and the British troops responded with a vicious wave of suppression. They burnt houses, churches, and tortured Catholic citizens. That was the last straw, and supporters of the United Irishmen pushed the leaders to act with a coordinated uprising. The characteristics that I found matched the revolution best was dissident elites. Presbyterians and Catholics wanted a secular government and no more ties to the Anglican Church, aka Britain. The specific goals of the revolution were demanding more rights to be given to the Catholics and Presbyterians. Another goal was to formally separate from Great Britain and for Ireland to become an independent nation. The final reason was to abolish the monarchy that was put in place by Great Britain and make Ireland a republic. The most prominent name that I have found during my research was the name Theobald Wolfe Tone. Theobald Wolfe Tone was a key factor in the revolution. He helped create the Society of United Irishmen, which were the underground radicalists that we were talking about earlier. The Society for United Irishmen also worked as a sort of resistance that worked towards the freedom of the Catholic people. Wolfe was very inspired by the American and the French revolutions and borrowed a few of their past tactics along the way. The people who opposed the revolution were the Irish Protestants who had been given all of the power by Britain. But in the end, Britain was the main opposer and oppressor, probably because Britain was the one in control and wanted to keep their negative peace in Ireland for as long as possible. I've created a timeline of events just to help people fully understand the events of the revolution. In 1790, Theobald Wolfe and a few other men formed the Society of United Irishmen. From 1790 to 1793, small battles broke out across the country, but none of them made any huge impacts. On May 23rd, 1793, an attack was planned on the mail carriers outside of Dublin, but it was unsuccessful. On May 27th, 1773, another round of attacks took place in Enniscorthy, I really hope I pronounced that right, and Wexford, and were somewhat successful, and they were able to take out a couple of units of militia in each town. The Wexford Rebellion. The Wexford Rebellion took place on the Wexford Bridge and lasted about a month. The battle was a major turning point because for the first time, the British intervened on the side of the Protestants and attacked the camp where the Catholics were staying. August 1793. One of the French armies got involved and attacked the British armies stationed in Ireland. Sadly, the French had to surrender to the British, but got off easy compared to the Irish Catholics who were slaughtered. But the French joined forces with Wolfe Tone a little later on in a battle, and they again lost. The battles only lasted 3 months and resulted in the British winning and the Irish resistance getting exiled. Ireland remained a British country for another century and a quarter, and they finally became an independent country in 1922. The after effects of the revolt were pretty underwhelming. They didn't make as much of an impact as they would have hoped. The British won, even with the help from the French. They were just too strong. Wolfe Tone, who was a prominent figure in the rebelling and one of the founders of the Society of United Irishmen, was sentenced to death by the British. Overall, the goals of the revolt were not achieved immediately. Ireland only became an independent country in 1922. Thankfully, Catholics were granted more rights after the war, and all of the battles created more unity in the country. Since the Irish Revolution took place after the Revolutionary War, there weren't any ties to the US. Also, since the war only lasted about 3 months, the only countries that were affected were Ireland, Britain, and France. They didn't really have enough time to bring in other countries for backup. The message that the Irish were trying to convey was that they wanted more of a say over their country's morals and decisions. They did have a few things in common with the American Revolution, where they both wanted freedom against Great Britain and to be an independent country, but overall they didn't really have any ties to each other. And now for the final segment of this video, fun facts. Number 1, Wolfe Tone was sentenced to be hanged, but ended up dying by a slit throat. People to this day don't know if he killed himself or was killed by a British soldier, but we do know that he was how he died. Number 2, one of the battles that took place was on a hill called Vinegar Hill. Number 3, Theobald was scheduled to be executed on the 12th of November, but ended up dying on the 19th November, not in the intended way. Number 4, Wolfe Tone was only 35 when he died, and his wife was 23 and had a young child. Number 5, one side of Ireland chose to side with the British and the other teamed up with France. In a way, this was a rebellion and a civil war at the same time. This happens a lot with wars where people start fighting because they have too many reasons to hate each other and need to fight out their differences. Personally, I'm pretty anti-violence. I don't know. I just feel like there are other ways to solve problems than murder and war. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you have learned about the Irish Revolution. Personally, it was super duper fun to learn about because I had never heard of the Irish Revolt before, but it was really fun to research and I learned a lot.